The United States has just entered Nazi France through the Normandy beach. Casualties are high, but the Allied forces pave through the German defense. This is the turning point of the war. The Allies have advanced, they're headed for Germany. Or are they? The German intelligence has just intercepted radio comms between the Allies, Span, and is marching toward Brittany's ports with big numbers. Quickly, the Germans rally up the soldiers and then headed to Brittany for Pan it's a breakthrough. The United States has just let their war effort off the road. 100,000 German troops are tied down in Brittany's fortresses. Pan was surely in for a big surprise. A day passes, then a week, then a month. The forces stay put. 7th Army? Affirmative. Pan is in Paris. This was but one of the elaborate works of the Ghost Army, the U.S. Army's top-secret special troops, activated on January 20th, 1944 at Camp Forrest, Tennessee. They took part in no battles, at least not directly. The Ghost Army's objective was deception. With 1,100 men enlisted, they could simulate all divisions. Colonel Harry was in charge of commanding this deception queen. He trained in Britain and fought from Normandy to the Rhine, utilizing rubber decoys, sound trucks, fake radio traffic, and so much more. The army had 4 specialized units under its command. The 603rd Engineered Camouflage Battalion consisted of 379 men in charge of handling visual deception. They carried with them inflatable rubber tanks, howitzers, trucks, jeeps, even aircraft, actively painting and arranging them to look like actual armored vehicles, or whole battalions. Fittingly, most of the camoufleurs were recruited from art schools. 296 men performing radio spoofing. Operators set up fake radio nets, broadcasts, comms, mimicking call signs and Morse code fists of actual US units so that Germany would not detect the ruse. 3,132nd Signal Service Company Special. 145 men maintaining the sonic deception branch. These soldiers would drive trucks, automobiles, military hardware fitted with recorders and gigantic speakers. In the dawn of night, they would broadcast pre-recorded sounds of trucks, tanks, and troops moving. These sounds could be heard from miles out and would even fool their own allies. 406th Engineer Combat Company. 168 combat engineers who provided perimeter security as well as engineering support for the Ghost Army. They would oftentimes dig out fighting positions or use bulldozers to imitate tank tracks, adding to the enemy's confusion. The force included famous artists like Pashmizana Bill Blass and painter Ellsworth Kelly. Altogether, they wreaked havoc over the German defense, using every sensory trick available. One of the primary tricks was dummy equipment, laying dozens of rubber tanks, guns, jeeps, and aircraft. While the US forces besieged the ports of Brest in Brittany, Ghost Army teams drove all over France to inflate the appearance of additional tank battalions, setting up 50-plus dummy tanks and guns, playing recorded tank sounds at night, and even going so far as to handle laundry and lighting fire, setting the ruse. The Germans were fooled. They had started to believe that 2 full tank battalions were arriving, and quick. They diverted troops to intercept these tanks, but as you probably anticipate, none were arriving. The Germans were forced to surrender Brest. But Brest was just the beginning. As Patton's Third Army thundered across France, the Ghost Army stayed close behind, ready to mislead German eyes and ears at every turn. In September 1944, outside the quiet Luxembourg town of Passenberg, the Germans believed Patton's flank was thin and ripe for attack. That's where the Ghost Army rolled in. They carried paint, canvas, rubber, and speakers. Within days, fields were dotted with inflatable Shermans, artillery batteries, and supply trucks. Sonic crews blasted recordings of tanks and bulldozers thundering down muddy roads. Meanwhile, radio ops set up entire fake headquarters, transmitting streams of messages that sounded exactly like those of a US division. The Germans bought it. Believing they were facing thousands of men and tanks, they held back their attack. The rear flank, lightly defended, was spared. Less than 1,100 tricksters had saved thousands of American lives. And then came December 1944, the Battle of the Bulge. The German army launched its last desperate offense in the Ardennes, smashing into Allied lines under the cover of snow. The Ghost Army was rushed forward, but this time they had to adapt. They couldn't risk setting up inflatable tanks in open snowfields, so instead they relied almost entirely on the radios. And what became known as Operation Kodak, Ghost Army operators ran deceptive radio traffic suggesting whole divisions were reinforcing threatened sectors. In reality, the Third Army was secretly pivoting to relieve the besieged town of Bastogne. German intelligence was fooled, once again, giving Patton the time and space to strike where it mattered most. Their greatest performance, however, came in March 1945, on the banks of the Rhine. The Rhine River was the last great natural barrier in the heart of Germany, and the Allies needed to cross. The Germans knew it. They were dug in, waiting for an attack. That's when the Ghost Army staged Operation Wesen. They created an entire phantom army. Hundreds of inflatable tanks, rows of fake artillery, trucks moving back and forth to simulate reinforcements, even military police directing traffic. Sonic trucks blasted the sounds of bridging equipment at night. Radio nets lit up with fake command SATA. To anyone watching from across the river, it looked like the US was preparing to cross at one spot. But it was all a sham. The real crossing came miles away, practically unopposed. Thanks to the Ghost Army's performance, thousands of German defenders were pointing their guns at shadows. By war's end, the Ghost Army had conducted over 20 full-scale deception missions across Europe. Time and again, they convinced the Germans that the Allies had more troops, more tanks, more guns than they actually did. Military historians estimate their operations saved tens of thousands of lives. And yet, their story remained hidden, classified, buried in war records for decades. The men returned home, sworn to secrecy. They didn't have medals, parades, or recognition. Most never even told their families. It wasn't until the 1990s that their work was declassified, and only recently that the world began to appreciate just how vital they were.